I told my wife I was 2,000 miles away. I stood in our kitchen at 6 in the morning, coffee in hand, and lied to her face with perfect calm. I said the audit in Houston would take 3 days. I kissed her forehead, grabbed my suitcase, and walked out the door. But I never went to the airport. Instead, I drove to a rental lot on the south side of the city, swapped my truck for a gray sedan with tinted windows, and parked 3 blocks away from the Casablanca. I was not supposed to be there. I was supposed to be the oblivious husband, the man who worked 60 hours a week to pay for the lifestyle Elena demanded. But instincts are louder than logic. I had felt the shift for 6 months. The coldness, the guarded phone screens, the way Ricardo, my business partner of 8 years, could not look me in the eye during our Monday briefings. I sat in the dark car, the engine off, the air conditioning silent. My phone was mounted on the dashboard. It was connected to a high-definition micro camera I had planted in a decorative planter near table 4 just before the lunch rush ended. I did not hire a private investigator. I trust no one but myself to handle my survival. The screen flickered. They arrived together. Seeing them walk in side by side hit me harder than I expected. Elena was wearing the green wrap dress, the one she bought for our 10-year anniversary. She had not worn it for me in over 2 years. She said it was too tight, too formal. Tonight, she wore it for him. Ricardo placed his hand on the small of her back as he guided her to the chair. It was a possessive gesture. Familiar. The way a man touches something he already owns. I watched in silence. I did not need audio to understand the body language. They leaned in close. Their knees touched under the table. Ricardo laughed at something she said, a relaxed, easy laugh that I had not heard in the office in months. With me, he was stressed, always complaining about margins and supply chains. With her, he was carefree. But then the dynamic shifted. This was the moment that changed everything. The waiter poured the wine and left. Elena stopped smiling. She looked around the room, checking for observers. She reached into her oversized purse. She did not pull out a gift. She did not reach for his hand. She pulled out a thick manila envelope and a silver flash drive. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. The leather creaked under my fingers. I tapped the screen to switch to the audio feed. I had taped a small microphone under the lip of the table. The sound was grainy, mixed with the clatter of silverware and background jazz, but their voices cut through. "Did you get it?" Ricardo asked. His voice was low, serious. "Everything," Elena whispered. She slid the envelope across the white tablecloth. The complete client database, the supplier contracts for the next 2 fiscal years, and the admin access codes for the offshore holding accounts. I stopped breathing. This was not just an affair. This was an execution. Ricardo opened the envelope. He scanned the documents, his eyes moving fast. "And the non-compete clauses?" "Nullified," she said. "I found the loophole you asked for. Once we file the divorce papers, the restructuring creates a 30-day window where the assets are unassigned. We can transfer the client list to the new LLC before Javier's lawyers can freeze it." My blood ran cold. The betrayal in the bedroom was one thing. I could survive a broken heart. But they were targeting my life's work. They were planning to strip the company down to the copper wiring and leave me with nothing but debt and a hollow shell. They were not just lovers. They were conspirators. Ricardo smiled. It was a look of pure greed. He took the flash drive and slipped it into the breast pocket of his charcoal blazer. He raised his wine glass. "To the future," he said. "To us." Elena clinked her glass against his. "To freedom," she replied. "He does not suspect a thing. He thinks he is in control. He is too busy trying to be the provider to see he has nothing left to provide for." They drank my wine. They laughed at my expense. In the car, the shock evaporated. It was replaced by a clarity so sharp it felt like ice water in my veins. I did not storm into the restaurant. I did not scream. I did not make a scene that would warn them. I reached for my laptop bag on the passenger seat. I opened the computer and connected to the remote server. I saw the access logs. Elena was right. She had downloaded everything 3 hours ago, right after I left the house. She thought she was clever. She thought she had won. But she forgot one thing. I built the system. I wrote the security protocols. And I knew exactly where the trapdoors were. I watched them order appetizers. I took a screenshot of Ricardo's hand on her thigh. Then I took a screenshot of the envelope exchange. Evidence. Timestamped. Irrefutable. I dialed a number. It was 11 at night, but I knew he would answer. "Roberto," I said when the line clicked open. "Javier? It is late. Is everything okay?" "No," I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. "Wake up. We are activating the scorched earth protocol. I want the asset freeze ready by 9 tomorrow morning. And draft the termination papers for Ricardo. Javier, wait. What happened? They are stealing the company, Roberto. I have it on video. Do not ask questions. Just get the paperwork ready. I am coming to your office. I hung up. I looked at the screen one last time. Elena was laughing again, her head thrown back, exposing her neck. She looked happy. She looked victorious. Enjoy it, I thought. This is the last expensive meal you will eat for a very long time. I started the engine and pulled away from the curb. The game had started, and they did not even know they were already losing. I did not go back to the motel. I drove straight to the financial district. The city was empty at 1 in the morning, the streets slick with humidity. I parked in the underground garage of the building where Roberto had his practice. He was waiting for me in the lobby, wearing a tracksuit and a look of grim determination. He knew me well enough to know that if I called him at midnight, the building was already burning. We went up to the 42nd floor. I did not waste time with pleasantries. I plugged the flash drive from the car surveillance into his secure air-gapped laptop. We watched the footage in silence. When it finished, Roberto leaned back and exhaled slowly. This is not just adultery, he said. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. It triggers the infidelity clause, yes, but it also triggers the corporate sabotage protection we wrote into the operating agreement. I do not care about the definitions, I said. I care about the timeline. They want to move the assets on Friday. Today is Wednesday. We have 36 hours to gut them before they realize they are holding a knife. We started to work. The first step was the defensive wall. I logged into the company mainframe using my master administrative credentials. I saw the digital footprints immediately. Elena had used my password, the one I trusted her with 2 years ago, to grant Ricardo level 4 access. They were downloading terabytes of data, client histories, pricing algorithms, vendor contracts. I did not block them. If I locked them out now, they would panic and try to liquidate the cash accounts immediately. I needed them to feel safe. Instead, I initiated a mirror protocol. I created a dummy directory on a separate server. It looked exactly like our live database, but every file inside was corrupted. I routed their download stream to this ghost drive. They were currently stealing useless binary noise, thinking it was my life's work. It was a digital placebo. Next came the money. Clause 6, Section B. Roberto read aloud, adjusting his glasses. In the event of documented betrayal resulting in financial risk, the primary earner retains the right to unilaterally freeze and transfer joint holdings to a secure escrow pending investigation. Do it, I said. We accessed the joint brokerage accounts. $500,000 in mutual funds. $200,000 in liquid savings. I authorized the transfer of every single cent to a trust account solely in my name. I watched the progress bar crawl across the screen. 10%. 50%. Completed. The balance on our shared screen blinked to 0. I did not stop there. I went after the credit. I contacted the fraud department of our primary lenders. I flagged our joint credit cards as compromised, citing suspicious activity in the region. By sunrise, every piece of plastic in Elena's purse would be a useless rectangle of plastic. She would try to buy a coffee and get declined. At 4 in the morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Elena. Hope the flight was okay, baby. Miss you already. Get some rest. I stared at the screen. The audacity was impressive. She was lying in bed, likely with my smell still on the sheets, texting me while plotting my ruin. I typed back a response. I needed to sell the lie one last time. Landed safely. Audit is a mess. Might be stuck here until Saturday. Love you. I hit send. That would give them confidence. They would think they had an extra day. They would get sloppy. Roberto handed me a stack of papers. The restraining orders are drafted. The termination notices for Ricardo are ready. The forensic accountant will be at your office at 8 o'clock to certify the theft. But Javier, you need to be careful. When this hits them, they will be dangerous. A cornered animal bites. I am counting on it, I said. I left his office as the sun began to rise over the skyline. I had one more stop to make before the final confrontation. I drove to the office. The building was quiet. The cleaning crew was just finishing their shift. I walked to the server room in the basement. I physically pulled the hard drives that contained the real backups. I replaced them with blank units. Even if they physically broke in, there was nothing here for them to take. I sat in my chair in the corner office. The same office Ricardo and I had rented 5 years ago when we landed our first major contract. I looked at his desk across the hall. It was messy, covered in disorganized piles of paper. I used to think it was just his creative process. Now I realized it was just laziness. I had carried him for half a decade. I had let him take credit for my strategies because I valued the partnership. I had let Elena into the inner circle because I valued the marriage. My kindness had been their weapon. Now, my competence would be their executioner. At 7:30, I saw the notification on my phone. The bank transfer had cleared. The trust was funded. The joint account was empty. The trap was armed. I stood up and smoothed my shirt. I was not going to stay in Houston. I was going home. I wanted to see her face when the first card of her house of cards collapsed. I wanted to be there when the reality hit. I drove to the house. Her car was in the driveway. I used the remote to open the garage door. It groaned as it lifted, a sound that usually signaled the end of a long day. Today, it signaled the beginning of the end. I walked into the kitchen. Elena was standing by the espresso machine. She was wearing a silk robe, humming a tune. She spun around when she heard my footsteps, her eyes wide with genuine shock. She dropped the mug she was holding. It shattered on the floor, ceramic shards skittering across the tile. "Javier," she stammered. You are in Houston." "The meeting was canceled," I said. My voice was calm, conversational. "I decided to come back and surprise you." I stepped over the broken pottery. I did not look at the mess. I looked directly into her eyes. I saw the panic flare up, the quick calculation happening behind her pupils. She was wondering if I knew. She was wondering if Ricardo had left any traces. "Oh," she said, forcing a smile that did not reach her eyes. She stepped forward to hug me. That is great. I missed you." I let her hug me. Her body was tense. She smelled of a shower gel that was not hers. It was a men's brand. Cedar and spice. Ricardo's brand. I pulled back gently. "Is something wrong, Elena? You seem on edge." "No," she said quickly. "Just surprised. You scared me." "I have that effect sometimes," I said. "By the way, do not use the joint debit card today. I got a fraud alert this morning. Probably nothing, but the bank froze it just in case." I watched the blood drain from her face. It was subtle, but it was there. She knew she needed that money to pay the retainer for her divorce lawyer today. "Froze it?" she asked, her voice rising an octave. "For how long?" "Hard to say," I said, walking towards the fridge to grab a water. "Security is tight these days. You never know who is trying to steal from you." I took a sip of water and watched her. The fear was starting to set in. Phase 1 was complete. Now, it was time to go to work and fire her lover. I arrived at the office at 8:45. The glass walls of the conference room were transparent, a fishbowl designed for transparency. Today, it would serve a different purpose. It would be a stage. I asked my assistant, Sarah, to clear her schedule and stand by the door with the 2 security contractors I had hired an hour ago. They were large men, silent and professional, dressed in black suits that strained against their chests. I sent the calendar invite at 8:50. Subject, urgent restructuring. Required attendees, Ricardo and Elena. They arrived together 9 minutes later. They must have been coordinating in the parking lot. Ricardo walked in first, his chest puffed out, trying to project authority. He was wearing the same charcoal blazer from the restaurant, perhaps thinking it was his lucky suit. Elena followed, clutching her purse tight against her stomach. Her eyes darted around the room, noticing the security guards standing like statues by the elevators. She looked pale. "What is this, Javier?" Ricardo asked, tossing his phone onto the mahogany table. "We have the vendor calls at 10. We do not have time for impromptu meetings." "Sit down," I said. I did not raise my voice. I did not stand up. I just pointed to the chair opposite me. Ricardo hesitated, his jaw tightening, but he sat. Elena took the seat next to him. She refused to look at me. She was looking at the screen of her phone, likely checking if her credit cards were working yet. They were not. "I am making some changes to the company structure," I said, sliding a single sheet of paper across the table to Ricardo. "Effective immediately." Ricardo picked it up. He scanned the document, and a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "A termination notice? For cause? Javier, you cannot be serious. I own 40% of this firm. You cannot fire a partner without a board vote." "Read the second paragraph," I said. He looked down. His eyes narrowed. "Gross misconduct? Embezzlement? This is ridiculous. I will sue you for defamation before the ink dries." "And you, Elena," I turned to my wife. "You are here because you are the head of accounts. You authorized the transfers." "I did what I was told," she said, her voice trembling. "Ricardo needed funds for the expansion." "There is no expansion," I said. I pressed a button on the remote in my hand. The projector hummed to life behind me. The video from the restaurant began to play. It was high definition. The audio was crisp. "Did you get it?" Ricardo's voice filled the room. "Everything. The complete client database." Elena's voice followed. The color drained from Ricardo's face so fast, it looked like a physical blow. Elena gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. The video continued. It showed the hand on the thigh, the kiss, the mockery of me, the toast to my destruction. I paused the video on the frame where they clinked glasses. That is corporate espionage, I said, and conspiracy to defraud. That video is already with the district attorney. But that is the least of your problems. Ricardo stood up, slamming his hands on the table. You illegally recorded us. That is inadmissible. Actually, the restaurant has a surveillance policy posted on the door, I lied smoothly. But let us talk about the theft. You think you have my client list on that flash drive in your pocket. Ricardo instinctively reached for his chest pocket. Go ahead, I said. Check it. He pulled out his laptop, fumbling with the drive. He plugged it in. He clicked on the folder labeled Master Client List. It is corrupted, I said. I knew you were downloading it. I rerouted your access to a mirror drive. You spent 3 hours downloading 4 terabytes of binary garbage. You have nothing. No names. No contracts. No leverage. Ricardo stared at the screen. The error messages popped up one after another. File corrupted. Data unreadable. You have 0 assets, I continued. But you do have liabilities. I audited the operational fund this morning. You took $300,000 over the last 6 months. You disguised it as marketing expenses. I was going to pay it back, Ricardo stammered. The arrogance was gone. He looked small. I know, I said. That is why I took the liberty of selling your debt. What? I covered the loss personally to keep the company solvent, I explained. Which means you effectively owed me the money. But I did not want to collect from you. So I sold the promissory note to a collection agency at a discount at 8 o'clock this morning. They are very aggressive. They will be looking for their $300,000 immediately. And since you used your house as collateral for your personal loans, well, Ricardo slumped back into his chair. He looked like a man who had been shot. Elena started to cry. It was a sharp, jagged sound. Javier, please. We can explain. It got out of hand. We never meant to hurt the business. You toasted to my ruin, I said coldly. Do not insult my intelligence with tears. I looked at the security guards and nodded. They stepped forward, their shadows falling over the table. Ricardo, you are trespassing, I said. Your access badge has been deactivated. Your car has been towed from the company lot because it is a company lease and I canceled it 20 minutes ago. You have 5 minutes to clear your desk. And me? Elena whispered. Am I fired too? You are my wife, I said. So this is more complicated. But as an employee? Yes. You are terminated. Security will escort you both out. Ricardo stood up slowly. He looked at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, Javier. I built half this place. You built nothing, I said. You just stood next to me while I laid the bricks. Get out. The guards moved in. One took Ricardo by the arm. He tried to shake him off, but the guard tightened his grip. Elena stood up, her legs shaking. She looked at me one last time, waiting for me to crack, to show mercy. I turned my back on them and looked out the window at the city skyline. I heard the door open. I heard the shuffle of feet. I heard the door close. Silence returned to the room. I was alone. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a notification from the bank. Trust account verified. The transfer of the house title to the holding company was complete. I sat down and exhaled. My hands were steady. My heart rate was 60 beats per minute. I had just dismantled 2 lives in 15 minutes. I felt a strange, cold peace. The cancer was cut out. Now, the healing could begin. But first, I had to survive the fallout. Because a man like Ricardo, with nothing left to lose, was about to become very desperate. And Elena. Elena was about to realize that the green dress was the most expensive thing she would ever wear again. Elena stood on the sidewalk outside the office tower. The security guards had escorted her to the curb and left her there. She looked at her phone. She had 4 missed calls from her mother, but she could not bring herself to answer. She needed to get away. She opened her ride-sharing app to call a car. She typed in Ricardo's address. She hit confirm. Payment declined. She stared at the screen. She tried a different card. The joint Visa. Card suspended. Contact issuer. She felt the panic rising in her throat, a physical weight. She had no cash. She never carried cash. Javier always told her to keep $100 in the glove box for emergencies, but she had spent it on a manicure last week and never replaced it. She walked 3 blocks to the parking garage where her car was parked. She prayed the pass card still worked. It did. Javier had not deactivated the building access for her personal vehicle yet. She drove fast. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. She needed to get to Ricardo. He would fix this. He always had a plan. He had money stashed away that Javier did not know about. They had opened an offshore account in the Cayman Islands 3 months ago. They had funneled $50,000 of vendor kickbacks into it. It was their escape fund. She arrived at Ricardo's luxury condo complex. She did not have a key, so she waited by the gate until a delivery truck exited, then slipped in through the closing gap. She parked haphazardly and ran to the elevator. She pounded on his door. "Ricardo, it is me." The door flew open. Ricardo stood there. He was not wearing the charcoal suit anymore. He was in jeans and a t-shirt, sweating. Behind him, the apartment was chaos. Suitcases were open on the floor. Drawers were pulled out. He was packing. "What are you doing here?" he snapped. He did not step aside to let her in. "Javier fired us," she said, pushing past him into the living room. He froze the accounts. "My cards are dead. I have nowhere to go." Ricardo laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "You have nowhere to go? I have debt collectors calling my sister looking for me. I have a fraud investigation starting on Monday. I am leaving the country, Elena, tonight." She froze. "We are leaving?" He stopped stuffing clothes into a duffel bag and looked at her. The look on his face was not love. It was not even lust. It was annoyance. "There is no we," he said. "I am going to Mexico City. You are staying here to deal with your husband." But we are partners," she stammered. "You said you loved me. You said Javier was boring, that he held me back." "I said what I had to say to get the admin codes," Ricardo said. He threw a stack of cash into the bag. "I needed access to the client database. You were the only way in. But you failed. The data is garbage. You are useless to me now." The words hit her like a slap. She took a step back. "You used me." "We used each other," he countered. "You wanted excitement. You wanted to feel young. I gave you that. Transaction completed." He zipped the bag shut. "Now get out. I need to lock up." "The Cayman account," she said, her voice rising. "We have the 50,000. Give me my half. I need money." Ricardo paused. He looked at his laptop sitting on the coffee table. "I tried to access it 10 minutes ago, to wire it to a crypto wallet. And it is gone." "What do you mean gone?" "Javier does not know about that account. It is under a shell company." "He knew," Ricardo said grimly. "He did not steal it. He did something worse. He flagged it." Ricardo turned the laptop around. On the screen was the banking portal. Across the top, a red banner flashed. "Account frozen. Interpol flag. Suspicion of money laundering." "He reported the deposit as drug money," Ricardo said. "If I try to touch that account, or if you try to touch it, the federal agents will be at the door in 20 minutes. It is radioactive." Elena stared at the screen. Javier had known. He had known about the kickbacks. He had known about the account. He had sat in their living room, watching television, while they thought they were being clever. He had been waiting. "He destroyed us," she whispered. "He destroyed you," Ricardo corrected. He slung the bag over his shoulder. "I can disappear. I know people. You? You are a suburban housewife with a fraud record. Good luck." He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door. She was too stunned to resist. He shoved her out into the hallway and slammed the door. She heard the deadbolt slide home. "Ricardo!" she screamed, pounding on the wood. "Open the door, please." Silence. She stood in the hallway for a long time. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. She was alone. She walked back to the elevator. Her legs felt heavy. She got into her car. The fuel light pinged. She had 20 miles of range left. She had no money for gas. She had no home to return to. She pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her contacts. She stopped at her best friend, Sarah. Sarah would help. Sarah hated Javier. She dialed. It rang once. Twice. Then it went to voicemail. She tried again. Straight to voicemail. She tried their mutual friend, Linda. Blocked. She realized then that the silence was not an accident. Javier had not just cut off her money. He had released the truth. He must have sent the video. Or the evidence. He had controlled the narrative before she could even speak. She sat in the driver's seat and looked at herself in the rearview mirror. The green dress was wrinkled. Her mascara was smudged. She looked like a stranger. She started the car. She had enough gas to get to one place. Her parents' house on the other side of the city. Her father was a strict man. He valued loyalty above all else. He loved Javier like a son. Going there would be the hardest thing she ever did. But she had no choice. She put the car in gear and drove out of the complex. As she turned onto the highway, she saw a black SUV parked across the street. The window rolled down. A man was taking pictures of her car. A process server. Javier was not done. He was documenting her flight. He was building the case for abandonment. He was watching her run, and he was letting her do it, because every mile she drove away from the marital home was another nail in her coffin. She gripped the wheel and began to weep. Not for the marriage, not for Javier, but for the terrifying realization that she was completely and utterly exposed. The safety net was gone. The ground was gone. She was falling, and there was no one left to catch her. 12 months passed. They say time heals all wounds. But that is a lie for people who are too weak to take action. Time does not heal. Action heals. I did not spend the year drinking whiskey in the dark or feeling sorry for myself. I spent it building. Without Ricardo's chaotic spending and Elena's hidden withdrawals, the company did not just survive. It thrived. I streamlined the operations. I cut the dead weight. Revenue increased by 40% in the first 2 quarters. I hired a new operations director, a woman named Sarah who was former military. She valued discipline. She valued loyalty. We landed the government contract that Ricardo said was impossible to get. I also rebuilt the man in the mirror. I started waking up at 5 in the morning. I joined a boxing gym in the warehouse district. There is something clarifying about taking a punch to the ribs and staying on your feet. It taught me that pain is just information. It tells you where your guard is low. I dropped 20 pounds. I bought a new wardrobe, not to impress anyone, but to reflect the reality of who I was. A man who had walked through the fire and did not burn. I heard rumors about them, of course. The city is smaller than people think. Ricardo did not make it to Mexico City. The collection agency I sold his debt to was very efficient. They flagged his passport before he crossed the border. He was detained in Laredo for attempted flight while under financial investigation. Last I heard, he was facing 3 years for fraud and tax evasion. He lost his condo. He lost his car. He lost his reputation. He was currently working under the table at a landscaping company, trying to pay off legal fees that would bury him for a decade. And Elena, I saw her on a Tuesday afternoon. It was pure chance. I was leaving a meeting with a potential investor at the upscale Marina District. I walked to my car, a new black sport utility vehicle with leather seats that still smelled like the factory. She was standing by the valet stand, but she was not a guest. She was wearing a black vest and holding a stack of laminated menus. She was the hostess, but not at a high-end place. She was working the lunch rush at a tourist trap burger joint next door. She looked different. The green dress was gone. She wore black slacks that were a size too big and orthopedic shoes. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was pulled back in a severe, messy bun. She looked tired. Not the tired of a bad night's sleep. The deep, bone-weary exhaustion of someone who wakes up every day knowing they are trapped. I unlocked my car. The chirp of the alarm made her look up. Our eyes locked. For a second, I saw the old Elena. The flash of recognition. The instinct to smile. Then, the shame. Her face turned crimson. She took a half-step forward, clutching the menus to her chest like a shield. She looked at my suit. She looked at the car. She saw the life she threw away for a cheap thrill and a conspiracy that failed. Javier, she said. Her voice was thin, cracked. I stood by the driver's door. I did not open it yet. I just looked at her. I waited for the anger to rise. I waited for the satisfaction or the grief. But there was nothing. It was like looking at a stranger. A ghost from a bad movie I watched a long time ago. Javier, please, she said, stepping closer. I tried to call. My number is blocked. I just want to talk. I am living in a studio apartment on 4th Street. It is awful. I miss us. She reached out a hand. Her fingernails were short, unpolished. I looked at her hand. Then I looked at her eyes. Excuse me, I said calmly. Do I know you? She flinched as if I had slapped her. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I think you have me confused with someone else, I said. I do not know you. Stop it, she whispered. Tears welled up in her eyes. It is me, Elena, your wife. My wife died a year ago, I said. She died the moment she decided to betray me for a paycheck. I do not know who you are, but you are blocking my door. I opened the car door and got in. I did not slam it. I closed it firmly. The sound sealed out the noise of the street. It sealed out her. I started the engine. The powerful rumble of the motor vibrated through the seat. I checked the side mirror. She was still standing there, holding the menus, crying silently in the middle of the sidewalk. A tourist bumped into her and complained about the service. She had to turn around and apologize. She had to go back to work. I put the car in drive and pulled away. I did not look back. 10 minutes later, I pulled up to the soccer fields on the north side. The grass was bright green under the sun. My son, Leo, was waiting by the gate with his gear bag. He was 12 years old, sharp, and observant. He had seen the separation, but he had also seen his father stand tall. He knew the truth. I never lied to him. He tossed his bag into the back and climbed into the passenger seat. He was sweating, his face flushed with victory. "We won," Leo said, grinning. 3-1. I scored the last goal. "That is my boy," I said, reaching over to ruffle his hair. "Hard work pays off." "Yeah," he said. He looked at me. "You look happy, Dad." I smiled. It was a real smile. "I am happy, Leo. I am very happy." We drove toward the ocean. The road was open. The rearview mirror was clear. I realized then that revenge was not about making them suffer. They did that to themselves. Revenge was this. It was the peace of a quiet mind. It was the success they said I could not have without them. It was the laughter of my son in the seat next to me. Some roots do not grow back when you cut them. And thank God for that. Because now, the garden was finally clean.